Can we hear it for Sergeant Paul Cruz? Man, he's so good. Where are you? I want to know what you're going to run for. Where is he? What an incredible, incredible leader, American leader. I want to congratulate and thank all the leaders who have been a part of today. Congresswoman Debbie Mercasel-Powell, thank you for welcoming us to your district. Magdala Orioles, Fat Joe, Jose Andres, and of course, Sergeant Paul Cruz. Thank you all. There's the Congresswoman. Thank you all. Okay, you guys ready to do this? We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And let me just start by saying, I know there's been, folks on the other side trying to question the values that Joe Biden and I have. So let me just be really clear, Florida. Joe Biden and I are proud, patriotic Americans who share the values with the vast majority of the American people who want a president of the United States who speaks truth, who uses that platform not to beat people down, but to lift people up. The vast majority of the American people who want a president who understands that regardless of where we live, our race, our gender, the language our grandmother speaks, that we all have so much more in common than what separates us. That's what the American people want. That's what we want. So there's so much at stake, guys. So much at stake. And Florida's been so hard hit. I think that we're dealing right now with 4 crises that have all happened at the same time. We're dealing with this coronavirus, this pandemic, right? Which at this point has killed over 225,000 people in just the last several months. People who tragically, in many cases, were alone because of the nature of the virus, couldn't have family with them to hold their hands in their last hours and minutes on earth. This pandemic that has afflicted 9 million people in our country, who, by the way, will likely experience long-term health impacts. Doctors are talking about things like lung scarring. We are looking at a moment where there has been such tragedy in terms of loss of life, a mass casualty event that could only be compared to World War II. And here's the thing. The President of the United States, who is also the Commander-in-Chief, and it's important to point out, everything Sergeant Cruz said about the responsibility that comes with what we give that person to become that, including that their first priority should be the health and safety of the American people. But what do we have in the guy who's currently in the White House? On the issue of this pandemic, thanks to a guy by the name of Bob Woodward, we know he knew back on January 28th that this virus could kill people at 5 times the rate of the flu. We know he knew that it would impact people of every age. He knew it was airborne. And what did he do with that information? Right, sister. He covered it up. He didn't tell the American people. Can you imagine, as a parent, as a teacher, as a small business owner, what you might have done had you known on January 28th what the president knew? What you might have done? Because here's the thing, even before the pandemic, Far too many Americans were working 2 and 3 jobs to put food on the table and pay the rent. And by the way, in Joe Biden and my America, nobody should have to work more than 1 job to pay the rent and put food on the table. How people might have prepared. How people might have prepared knowing that even before the pandemic, most families don't have even $1,000 in savings. And if folks had known the predictable, which is that we might have to isolate, we may have to shut things down for a little bit, people could have saved up. How people could have prepared. Buying an extra couple rolls of toilet paper. But they sat on that information. And now, in the midst of this public health crisis, Donald Trump with his boy Bill Barr are in the United States Supreme Court suing to get rid of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act that President Obama, together with Joe Biden, brought to America and covered over 20 million people, including people with pre-existing conditions. Honk if you know somebody with diabetes. Honk if you know somebody with high blood pressure. Honk if you know somebody with breast cancer or lupus. And they're trying to take it away. So there's a clear choice in this election because, you see, on the one hand, there's Joe Biden who says, we're going to expand what we did in creating Obamacare. We're going to make sure we bring down the cost of premiums and prescription medication. We're going to bring down Medicare eligibility to age 60. We're going to deal with the fact that when we're talking about health care, the body doesn't just start from the neck down. It includes the neck up, and that's called mental health care. A clear choice in this election. A clear choice. This pandemic has resulted in an economic disaster that is being compared to the Great Depression. Over 30 million people in just the last several months have filed for unemployment. Here in Florida, 1 in 9 households is describing their household as having been hungry. Here in Florida, 1 in 7 households is describing having a difficult time or finding it impossible to pay rent. Here in Florida, 1 in 4 small businesses is out of business, likely never to be able to reopen. And what does Donald Trump say? We're rounding the corner. But here's the thing on the economy. So on the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who when asked, how's the economy doing, always asks the question, well, tell me how working people are doing. Tell me how working families are doing. Which is why Joe Biden will not increase taxes on anyone making under $400,000 a year. Will bring down middle-class taxes, will put in place a policy where if you have children, you will pay no more than 7% of your income in child care. We will have a tax credit for first-time home buyers of $15,000, knowing that will help with down payment and closing costs. And on the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who when asked, yes, baby, who when asked about the economy, asks, well, how's the stock market doing? Asks, how are rich people doing? Which is why, as one of his first orders of business, he passed a tax cut for the top 1% and the biggest corporations in America, which will cause us to have to deal with a $2 trillion deficit. Well, with your help, Florida, over these next 3 days, when and God willing, if we win, Joe Biden and I are about to get rid of that tax cut and invest that money in working people. Invest that money in building back up our infrastructure, repairing our roads and bridges, investing in renewable energy and the creation of millions of jobs, investing in our students who come from families that have less than $125,000 so you can go to a 4-year state college free or an HBCU free. The crises we are dealing with includes a long overdue reckoning on racial injustice in America. And on the one hand, you have Joe Biden, who, being a student of American history and having the courage to speak truth, can say and speak the phrase, Black Lives Matter. Joe Biden, who says we need to deal with racial disparities in America. We need to speak truth about systemic racism. We need to acknowledge that on this virus, Blacks and Latinos are 3 times as likely to contract it and twice as likely to die from it. We need to speak truth about disparities in our healthcare system when Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die in connection with childbirth than other women. We need to speak truth about a criminal justice system and reform that system and decriminalize marijuana and expunge the records of people who have been convicted of marijuana offenses and shut down private prisons and end cash bail, because it is not only a criminal justice issue, it is an economic justice issue. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists, who then doubled down and said they should stand back and stand by. And let's be clear, this is part of a pattern, because remember, he came in office questioning the legitimacy of the first Black president of the United States. Remember, on the issue of Charlottesville, where folks were peacefully protesting racial injustice, one young woman was killed. And on the other side, there were a bunch of neo-Nazis wearing swastikas, carrying tiki torches, spewing racial and anti-Semitic epithets. And the President of the United States said there are fine people on both sides. A President of the United States who came into office calling Mexicans rapists and criminals, put as his first order of business a Muslim ban in effect. We don't want that in the President of our United States. We deserve better. We want a President of the United States who understands you want to measure the strength of anyone. You want to measure their strength? You measure a person's strength not by who they beat down, but who they lift up. And we are in the midst also of a climate crisis. It's hot. And it's getting hotter. a climate crisis. You know, I come from California. The wildfires have been just burning up the West Coast, from California to Oregon to Washington to Colorado. You know, I've met families and met with families who had to evacuate. They lost their home, permanently lost their home. I've met with firefighters who were fighting the wildfires while their own homes were burning. In fact, my brother-in-law is a firefighter. You know, in the Gulf Coast states, you all know that, the storms that have been hitting, do you know we've had 5 named storms just this year? And we name a storm because it's that bad that it should actually be acknowledged with a name. That's how bad things are. And so Joe Biden says, hey, we need to deal with the science. We need to embrace the reality and the urgency and the immediacy of this issue. We need to understand it is not only an existential threat to us as a species, it is something that transcends into civil rights and human rights issues when you know that of all the people in our country who live in poor air quality zones, 70% are people of color. He knows that when we're talking about water as an issue, we think of places like Flint. And Joe says, let's deal with the science, but do it in a way that we also see an economic opportunity for the creation of jobs. Investment in renewable energy, investment in solar and wind. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who, I kid you not, when asked about the wildfires in California, and the question went something like, Mr. President, you know, these wildfires are happening. The scientists are telling us that there are extreme changes in the climate, that there's a connection also with human behaviors. Do you know that the President of the United States responded by saying, science doesn't know? The President of the United States. Well, here's the thing, Mr. President, science does know, and so does the leading science magazine that endorsed Joe Biden for President of the United States. So there's a lot going on, and we got 3 days to get this done. And so let's talk for a minute about voting. You know, people have been asking me, and I'm sure you, because this is a whole beautiful group of leaders. People have been asking, why should I vote? And I think there are 3 reasons that everyone should vote. 1, honor the ancestors. Honor the ancestors. Honor people like the late, great John Lewis, who shed his blood on that Edmund Pettus Bridge so we could vote. I know he hears you. I know he hears you. Honor the ancestors, those suffragettes who 100 years ago got us the passage of the 19th Amendment. But let's always speak truth. Black women couldn't vote until 1965, so there is that. So, reason number 1, let's honor the ancestors who sacrificed so much for our right to vote. Reason number 2, everything is at stake. Everything. Everything we just discussed, including creating a pathway for citizenship for our undocumented immigrants, renewing our promise to our dreamers with DACA, shutting down private detention centers, reuniting 545 children with their parents who the United States government orphaned. There's every reason to vote in terms of what's at stake. And then here's the last point that I'd make as reason number 3, including that America's future is at stake. We are, I'm traveling all over the country. This is I don't know how many times I've been to Florida since I've been on the ticket, and many times before that. Thank you, Debbie. All over our country, people are putting in place laws and procedures to make it difficult for us to vote, making it confusing to vote, you know, purging voter rolls, passing laws to suppress the vote, picking up drop boxes. I was in Houston yesterday, a county of 11 million people with one drop box. Trying to make it confusing in different places in Florida, different days, right? Different envelopes you got to fill out and who's going to sign them. The President of the United States who took the stage at the debate and openly attempted to suppress the vote. So here's the thing. When we look at where we are in terms of these powerful people who are trying to, and we're not going to be distracted by what's at hand. We're not going to be distracted by the stakes. We're not going to be distracted. We know what we have to do. And so, here's my point. Here's my point. You gotta ask, why are these powerful people trying to make it so difficult for us to vote? And I will tell you, I believe the reason they're trying to make it difficult and confusing for us to vote is because they know our power. They know our power. They know when we vote, things change. They know when we vote, we win. They know our power, and let us not ever let anyone take our power from us. And so my last point, Miami, is this. This moment will pass. And years from now, our children, our grandchildren will ask us, where were you at that moment? And what we will tell them is so much more than just how we felt. We are going to tell them what we did. We are going to tell them we organized, we mobilized, we stood in line, we emailed and texted and called everybody we knew multiple times till they got sick of us, but we knew they'd get over it. And we will tell them we elected Joe Biden, the next president of the United States. Thank you, Miami. Gracias.